everybody. Welcome back to the Prehospital Paradigm Podcast. I'm Scott Wildenheim. My usual crew with me. Got Caleb Ferroni off to the left here. Got Ray Pace to the right. Across from us, I have Falon Steiner, who is our EMS manager, and she is in charge of all of our initial EMS training programs. Welcome. We've been talking about this for a long time, and we finally decided that we'll get you in here. We'll do a EMS education piece, and we really want to kind of slay two dragons here. Is for the established provider, we want to talk about some of the pathways, some of the established provider that maybe is moving on to paramedic, right? So they're currently an EMT. They're moving on to paramedic school. We want to talk about all of the things we talk about, I swear, at the beginning of every class that everybody's surprised about, and then nobody follows through with. Yep. Then the other side of that is, for the established paramedic listener and viewership, give them a kind of an idea of what's going on in the EMS education space, and as they're seeing students come to ride time, or they're encountering them in clinicals and whatnot, how it's different from, I mean, I take nearly 30 here.
Even in the last year, how much it's changed. There's been a tremendous amount of change in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of talking about just some of the registry testing stuff. But before we hop right into registry stuff, tell us a little bit about the UH programs, what your span of control is, and what some of our internal map looks like. Just for, again, we're not exclusively talking to Ohio, and we're not exclusively talking to UH Medical Control. So cross section of what our programs look like.
So we span a pretty large portion of Northeast Ohio, and we manage really with accreditation. There's overarching, and we do a lot of individual programs when you get down into the EMT space. But when you talk the paramedic space, we go from Conneaut, Nashville area, to then we lump in the middle in the Canfield area, and then we come out here to Geauga, Portage, and then we go as far west as Parma. Now we lump most of those by what we're doing for a paramedic program and accreditation, but then there's a multitude of other programs when it comes to EMT that run underneath of that, some of which are for community benefit, some of which then are feeder programs for a paramedic program, because ultimately that becomes the goal for a lot of people. Hundreds, 300 plus students every year that we're running across that system, so it's a pretty large number that we're providing education to.
Now, you kind of threw in there a little bit on accreditation. So when I went to paramedic school in the late 90s, it was, again, we're talking about, this is why nobody likes you.
There was one medication in my box.
Honestly, we had to learn a considerable amount of drugs that
we don't use
anymore. That we don't use anymore.
Sure.
Right.
A lot of them are gone.
Absolutely. Isoproterenol, Bertilium, et cetera.
When you hear this, does it bring back memories? Shock. Everybody shocked. And let's make patients better.
If I can steer off topic for a second, it's really amazing how stuff that you were taught in initial training that was beat into your head that has been out of practice for literally decades at this point.
That you can just regurgitate.
That was how I was originally.
Mass pants,
Mass pants, shock, everybody shock, little shock, big shock, mama shock, pop shock. I mean, it's reflexive. We don't treat, we don't run any ACLS code like that.
Not that years.
But it's just uncanny how that just sticks with you, and but that also adds its own level of complexity to expanding your scope, expanding your knowledge, because you always want to practice like you were taught initially, right? So it's hard to get away. Let's get back to that accreditation thing. You got me off on a little tangent there, but that accreditation thing. So when I went to paramedic school, it was the local hospital. They had a blessing from the state to teach paramedic programs. What does that look like today? I know there's additional complexity, and obviously purely leading questions here, because we have a table of EMS instructors here that live this all the time, right? Purely a leading question, but what does that landscape for accreditation of programs look like, both from an EMT and a paramedic perspective today?
So EMT programs are still state accredited and managed. So that all goes through approval with the state. When you get to paramedic programs specifically, now you have to still manage state accreditation, and you still have to have everything approved by the state, and they have their own set of guidelines. And then you also have COAMPS, which is technically accredited by CAAHEP. So CAAHEP makes all the rules and makes the accrediting body, and then COAMPS kind of helps with the interpretation of those rules, paperwork, best practices, things like that. It's kind of like a state accreditation really on steroids. So anybody that's familiar with the accreditation process with the state, basically you have to put they make best practices, plus they make all the pieces that you have to follow by OAC guidelines. And then from there, now you publicize your syllabus, you tell them when you're running a class, you tell them who's involved in the class, you tell them where the students are. It's kind of the management portal for telling them that somebody passed the program, and then they can get certification once they go through National Registry. So COAMPS does the same thing, but at the paramedic level, and they look at what are your hours in the program, are you meeting all your clinical requirements, are they doing X amount of IVs and IM injections and whatnot, and then they come out and review that. So there's a ton of paperwork that you submit to them over periods of time, and then they come out and review your program to make sure that you're still maintaining those standards. And just recently, they're also starting to take on advanced programs too. So they're trialing that piece of it, where it'll probably turn out that advanced programs are managed by
advanced EMT providers. Yeah.
And I think taking that one step further, Ethan, it has its safeguards too. I mean, we've had issues with students, instructors, and part of what COAMPS requires is that you have a board for your program, and so that having that, I'm obviously not on the board because I'm an instructor, but they get to meet, and they're the ones that make decisions on.
Well, and to your point, that board is more than just, like, it can't just be UH people.
Right.
It can't just be educators. That board is community members.
Community at large,
that is non-EMS providers. That is people from other learning institutions that are professors but have nothing to do in the medical field. Yeah. So it's best practices not just for EMS education, but just a higher level of learning.
And don't we have like a lawyer on our board, as well as the sheriff's on our board. Local sheriff,
which is again, I think, a great thing, because a lot of the grievances you might have, or the class discussions that you might have, that goes to the board, it's non-biased opinion then, and then it comes back to us, and it's like, this is how the board voted, this is how we're going to settle it.
Well, and they're the ones that review our handbook. We present to them when we get our student feedback and our RAM reports from the students. We go back to the board and say, this is what the students presented, this is our idea for how we improve or what we should do to change next year, and they say, yay, nay, that sounds like a good thing or not a good thing, which allows you for a lot of different opinion, and not just this narrow focus of I'm making paramedics. But you get a little better.
It makes a very diverse group of people that are going to bring different ideas, different stakeholders in the community, and that's going to give you that larger view. That's going to give you a different perspective that we might not have. So I think it's good to do that. It's good to adapt it and have all the different inputs and ideas to those.
And there's a lot behind it, though. I mean, you brought up the student handbook. Like, when I did paramedic, and I know when you guys did paramedic, we didn't have a student handbook. It was kind of you started the program, and if it maybe a handout, right?
And so Dan showed up and said, "Don't do this."
Our student handbook is pages, but if there's a problem in class, if there's a grievance, or if there's a issue with clinicals, it's all in the handbook, and I can go back and tell them, go look in the handbook. You'll find the pathway to the right answer here.
Well, that also brings value to the handbook, because that's one thing for even the provider coming into paramedic school to know. Like, all this time and development does go into the handbook. It's not just just something we slap together to say we have some rules to hold people accountable, right?
Sure.
That is a bunch of information we have to meet to, and COA goes and looks at that,
Yeah.
and they say, you know, you're missing this piece, or you need to change that line, or we don't like the way you
Right,
do that,
right.
even down to our clinical handbook. So when you're signing off on your handbook signature at the beginning of class, you really need to know that that exists and be able to reference it. Now, it's like an employee manual, right? Do you memorize every page of an employee manual? No, you don't. But before you go take vacation time, you go look at your
You go
employee
look at-
manual
yes,
to make
correct.
sure you validate
Yeah.
what you do. That really should be the same thing. And that's really an undervalued resource in the program a lot of times is, well, go back and look at your resource. You have a book for that.
Yeah, and I think the more that we start running into challenges within students or instructors within the programs or clinical sites, the more we're as instructors and leaderships that we have here are now relying on that, saying there's a pathway and I know that it works. Let me go back, or let me tell the student, follow the handbook. You signed off on it. You've read it. It's why your signature is there. And I'm finding out more and more that just telling them that, hey, review it in the handbook and then come back to me. When you come back to me with what's in the handbook, I'm going to pass this on to Falon, or I'm going to pass this on to Karen. And usually at that point, it's resolved itself. And if it hasn't, there's a pathway in the handbook to get there. And so
There's an escalation.
if there's not that student handbook in a program that you're looking to attend, I think that you should look for that, because it's almost like a contract that works both ways. It protects you and it protects the student.
Yep.
100%.
Yeah, and I mean, the nice part about that is, to your point, it's not just something you sign off on one time and then it's done, right? It's not just, okay, we have a handbook, we're going to use it for the next 20 years. Times change. You're going to have complexities that are going to change, whether it's with students, instructors. Yeah, it's going to be dynamic. You need to update it, change it. Not that you make major changes every time, but we always have that instance of, well, this wasn't in there, or this has never happened before. Sure, and you have to adapt it and update it.
It's like at the firehouse. Every policy has somebody's name behind it. If you look
100%.
far enough,
Yeah.
the handbook grows.
So one of the other things that COA kind of impresses upon us and that we have to meet is transparency in all of our pass rates, our job placement, stuff like that. Beforehand, that was, before that, it was just kind of word of mouth, best kept secret.
Come to us,
where
we're
did you, you'd ask your colleague where, and that's literally how I chose. That's part of the way I chose the medic program I went to, was complete word of mouth, right? There was no objective data anywhere for me to say, oh, look, their pass rates are this, their washout rate is this, their placement rate is this, and those are all data points that we have to share.
Yeah.
And everybody has to share. It's not a it's not just something that UH elects to do.
It's not a request.
No.
It's a requirement.
It also is required. It also is required that it's 2 clicks away. So whatever website you go to, you can make no more than 2 clicks to get to that information. Yeah. So it goes even farther. Is it has to be easily accessible. You can't go hiding it deep somewhere in there.
Wow.
To the point where even we have publicized back to 2017 on our website right now, and we were just talking about how much space do we have to keep growing that, but it is a great data set to have.
It is, and we take pride in it too. If you look at 100%, 100%, 99%, 98%, that's phenomenal pass rates, and it's like, that's not because we started with 48 students and ended up with 5. No, that would really hurt our pass rate if one failed at that point. It's usually a large group that's sticking semi-large group at the end, and they're getting good pass rates. And I think all of us take that as, like, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. It's not to get my name somewhere. It's not to push this. That's what I want. I want to make more paramedics out there. And I think I start every class the same time at the same year, is just, I'm not here for any other reason but to make you a paramedic, because we need paramedics. It's like, badly.
And nobody wants to spend $1,000 to take a test.
No. Yeah, the more you take the test, it adds up.
Yeah.
Correct. Anything else in the accreditation bit that any hoops that they make us jump through? We talked a little bit about you made mention of kind of the handbook for the field preceptors. All of that is now regulated. It's not just, hey, you get to go to XYZ fire department or go to XYZ station or company or wherever you're doing your those people also have to abide by
And we have to have like a live signature and live validation when students are going to capstone. So it's like a reoccurring process all the time when they get in this last part of their classes and are doing a bunch of hours of ride time. We have to have validation on every one of those signatures. So it is nice. There's definitely blessings and curses that come as a part of that. But yes, there are a ton of checks and balances, and a lot of what we do is because it's what we want to do, and some of what we do is because we need to do it to have those balances. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, on the firehouse side, I know that every year when students are about to be released into the world for the first time, they have to do their orientation training on the fire end too. They say this, you're gonna have students. This is how to treat them fairly. This is how to grade them fairly, and if they're not getting anything out of the ride site except for time, that's not a good ride site. No. So it's a really good educational piece too that COAMPS has incorporated into that, to say that you have to go out, you have to educate the ride site also, to say this is what you're going to do. I understand there's some grievances, there's some complaints still about the fact that they have to do the signatures every year, but you have to do that for your EMS billing too. You have to do that for NIFRs. You have to do it for everything else.
For everything else in life.
Yeah, everything else in life. You got to update these too. And it takes you 5 seconds to sign it. It's not even. Just sign it. And
well, I think too, it's based on your organization as well. Like, speaking from the fire side of it, we do the education. This is what's expected of the student. It's very clear cut. This is what's expected of the the preceptor. This is what's going to go on at the ride site. This is how to coach. This is how to mentor that student. So not only are the instructors in the program developing and mentoring and educating the student, but when that student goes out to the ride site, there's a lot of education that's going to happen in the field. So, your organization, if you're willing to accept students, then, you have to play an active role in that. You are actively participating in their education and shaping that future paramedic. So, you need to put effort in too as well. Like our place, our organization, very pro students. We have a paramedic student every day. Every time I get the email every Sunday, boom, here's your schedule. It's all yellow. It's full every single day. It's pretty rare we do not have a paramedic student. Sure. But our staff enjoys that. They like that. They like to teach. We have a high call volume. So it's like, we're probably going to go to 8 to 10 calls in your 8 hours that you're here, or 12 hours that you're here, guaranteed. And it might be 15 or 20, depending on if they're there for 12 hours. Like, just depends on the day. But your staff have to want to engage that, right? They want to buy into that. But our staff does. Luckily, in our organization, we have a lot of positive EMS educators as well. They want that. They want interaction. And we actually will not even send backup to a call unless it's requested. So if we have a student that's a paramedic student and they have a full arrest and we run 2-person ambulances, and they get a full arrest, we don't send backup unless they call for it.
Right.
So it's like you're truthfully like you're part of our system.
You're part of that crew.
They're eating lunch with us. They're studying with us. They're asking questions. Like, we want to integrate them and show them this is what it's really like in the field.
That's a built culture, though, and I think that's important. I mean, not every department is like that. I know that ours is. I know that yours is. But that's a built culture, and it's something that you tailor good ride sites to that, right? I mean, we can't expect a student to show up and get nothing out of that time. It's not worth it to anybody.
Well, and think about a world where you didn't have that clinical time, right? Think about if the students just went to school and they came to your department fresh and the rest was left up to you, right? That arguably that clinical time, and especially some of those last clinical hours that they do in capstone, are the most important.
They're critical.
That's their orientation program before they get to your department. So if you have departments like at your department that are putting a ton of time into the students, you're getting them there before they get hired somewhere. And if you're not, then you're having to redo that, and then what was the point of the program?
It's such
an
investment on both ends.
Yes.
I mean, you can go to the way, too, that every time we have a student, we're interviewing that student. And not just for our department. We're interviewing it for your department. You're interviewing that student for – and this last class especially, I've gotten to the point in my career that I know a lot of people. And every single person that walked in when we started class the first day, I said, who are you? Where are you from? And then they would tell me, and I would say, oh, I know so-and-so. I know so-and-so. And it's like, holy cow, every one of them. And then once they were all in the room, I said, what did one thing in common we have here when you walked in? They said, well, you knew somebody that we knew, or 2 or 3 people. And it's like, right. So what does that tell you when you go out and you're interviewing at any ride site you're at, any hospital? We all talk. Firemen are bored most of the time when we're not on calls and we're not training. So we get bored, we talk. Everybody knows everybody.
It's a very, very small fishbowl. I tell the story. we had a guy leave our agency 15 years ago. Went to a rural county department in like Carolina, and he gets on the truck and he's working with the guy like, I know Scott. I worked with him back in Cleveland back in the day. And he's like, you got to be kidding me. I'm,
what was his name?
1,000 miles away. I can't remember actually.
I probably know who you're talking about.
But yeah, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But I remember, obviously the story is amusing. It's like thousands of miles away. It's like how small that fishbowl really is, right? So we'll get back to a little the COAM stuff, but part of that is you keep referencing capstone. So for the old dog, when I went to paramedic school, I just did everything. I front-loaded all my all of my ride time, all of my clinical experience, and then I just coasted through the end of paramedic school. I did nothing, right? I showed up to the day, to the day, but I had nothing else to do. I had met my hour requirements.
Away you go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And here I am, right? Obviously, that's leading up to we've changed the way we do business, and that's very intentional.
Yes. Well, so this already started. Everybody is kind of in an uproar right now because registry, as most know, got rid of psychomotor requirements. So doing a hands-on skill, and probably most of us in this room did the old, you had to start an IV, you had to throw away the medication appropriately, you had to draw up a medication, and then that dynamically changed to you did the integrated out-of-hospital scenario where you basically ran a 20-minute call and there was less of those individual skills pieces. And then the new model is no psychomotor. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, no psychomotor. What are we going to do? How are these students going to be validated? Well, it's moved to what's called a competency-based program. Sure. So you're proving yourself throughout the program and saying, okay, so in the first part of my program, I'm doing some clinical time and I'm just learning, right? I'm learning how to draw up the med. I'm doing most of my time in the hospital because that's where I'm going to give the most amount of medications. Sure. I'm doing all my IV starts there, down to modalities. I have to see an abdominal pain patient and I have to see all the pediatric age classifications and going down to that individual and that nitpicky. Then you're getting a little more experience and you're proving in the field. You're cleaning up some of your clinical time in the hospital over here, and then you're proving in the field that you can apply that to the field in the pre-hospital scenario. And then the last part of that phase is capstone, where essentially you're supposed to be running the call. Yeah. Now I'm supposed to be the paramedic running the scene, and now the department that I'm riding with is supposed to be there to back me up to make sure I don't do something dangerous.
Right.
So they're proving throughout the whole program that they're developing and they're capable of being a provider instead of one stress inoculation day at the end of the program to beat you up to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which none of that stuff existed when we went to paramedic school, really. It was just like you said, you signed up on a paper calendar, right? If you want to go to the hospital or you want to go to a ride site, you signed up on a paper calendar.
There were binders.
There were binders. Everything was on paper, right? And then it was just like...
You would erase each other's name if you were behind.
Yeah, like you could do all these things. So like we've moved electronic and the structure was built because like when I went to paramedic school, capstone didn't exist, right?
Same here.
All of us sitting at the table, this didn't exist.
It's pre-accreditation.
Yeah. And I think it's great the way it's been restructured because, and it's just like the state has done with not only just EMT programs but even fire programs. It's more competency based. We'll say the trigger word JPRs, and all that, and then you have the knowledge, skills, and abilities, right? All those different trigger words between NFPA and EMS lingo, and it's have we prepared that person to get them out into the field? But I think the capstone point is key because that truthfully allows that paramedic to go out on the field and have a safety net, run the call. But there's two providers there because we all know when we got out of paramedic school, it was like, I'll never forget my first call. I'm sure we all remember it. Exactly. I had a guy that was hit by a Jeep at 45 miles an hour and ran over, and it was like, hey, good luck. You know what I mean? It's like there was no safety net. It was you and an EMT. Figure it out, right? So now it's really good to see the program start to do that, and with COAMs requiring these sort of things. But that also sets that paramedic up for better success.
Oh, absolutely.
And also helps you work better as a team. It does a lot of fundamental building to get you to that competency level. So once you're set free, if you will, out to the field, all these different types of competencies have allowed you to successfully treat complex patients and situations appropriately.
Like the only milestones or barriers I had to cross that I can remember in my paramedic school was by the end of class, I had to have basically one of every rhythm strip.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
yes.
had to have my cardiac notebook completed.
How many times were those
and
Xerox?
then,
that you were
And
taping all the strips in.
Sub-Q injections.
Oh,
and
those
I
were,
was,
those were a nightmare. Yes.
So, I distinctly remember like
And the baby.
running around in the
OB.
ICU,
Yep.
just printing different, just
Yeah.
to make this book.
Just to
right?
make it
there
pass.
there was no, did I see X, Y's, did I see this many OB? Did I have an OB rotation? I sure did. But if you didn't see anything, there was no bar to cross, right? If you went
Correct.
there and nobody's hatching today,
Yeah. That was it.
then, okay.
Yeah.
Then
Clearly, you didn't do OB.
then check. I went to my OB clinical,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But now you actually have to prove that you have those, and part of that. And I think you were kind of trying to weave that in, but some of that is with technology and computerization of all these systems, is now they can enter that. We can validate it on the instructor side, like, yep, hey, there's a medical record number that matches that patient. You actually went and saw that patient, or these were things that actually happened. So there's that, that
Geofencing
I was
for
gonna
punch
say,
in
yeah.
and
So
punch
yeah,
out
well,
of clinicals.
I mean, just talk briefly about that
Yeah.
to assure that we're doing this in an honorable way. What are some of the tools we have?
The whole clinical landscape has changed tremendously.
Sure.
So, like, we put in an electronic clinical program where, first of all, there's these shared sites, which is awesome because you don't just get students from us, and we all share these students, and we have to. You can't just have one student body, or you're not going to be educating all the students across different systems.
If I may, we also have a unique system or a unique problem here in Northeast Ohio.
We
Saturated
do.
with
In
hospital
that we
systems?
have we have numerous hospital systems, and we have a lot of paramedic training programs.
Yeah.
Now, somebody in Middle Idaho watching this is like, "What are you talking about?"
We have a couple in the state.
We have a
maybe, or
couple in the
less
state. Well,
yeah.
I'm not picking on Idaho.
Sure.
Well, we're
your
also
thought.
unique as that our program specifically, because of the area that we cover, we have so many clinical sites.
Yep.
And we recently just went to a regional clinical model to say, because there's nothing to say that the student that comes to Geauga maybe doesn't live on the west side of town, and it's going to make more sense for them to do their clinicals out there. They came here because the time and the hours worked for them there, right? So we're trying to make that work for the students as best we can, because it's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hours.
I'm sorry, I interrupted your thought about the technology,
technology.
and what we're doing with
So
clinical.
we share this technology, and then what that allows is, first, there's safety rails. So now you have to have location sharing on, and when you clock in and when you clock out from clinicals, we can see that you were within the clinical site. We probably all can share stories about what people did in paramedic school to get through clinical time, right? Likewise, then when you're putting in your clinicals and your information, first of all, they're doing an electronic patient care report. Everybody's like, oh, no paper. Well, what are you doing in the field, right? So
EPCR.
yeah, and even better, much to their dismay, it's not even as nice as an electronic PCR where it'll work and it'll narrow down information. No, you have to pick all the data sets out yourself and write your narrative, and so they're doing all that, and then it ties back to a patient. So now they also have to document an MRN number or a run number from the fire department, where we can go back. It's still HIPAA compliant because it's all data protected information, but now I can go back and say, all right, so-and-so said they were at a department that may not run as many calls as another department, but they said they did 15 runs in a 4-hour period. This looks suspicious. Can we validate these runs? Was it just a bad day, right? And then we're making sure that they're actually getting that experience in that time before they get released.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we put a name on the product that we're trying to give. I mean, University Hospitals wants to give a high functioning fidelity paramedic, and when you know that resume comes with that name associated, we want that to be a good product that we've built. and invested in. So it's protecting us, but it's also protecting the student.
Correct.
Because the student can come back and say, I did do this. I was here, I have the proof, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I've seen it work both ways, and that's not a a threat or anything, but I've seen it work both ways, where it'll either work in the student's favor or in our favor. But again, we're making something, and we want to be the best at what we do in a way. So this is a fail-proof for us as well. That says, no, I can hold you to this.
Well, and it proves that the expectations are realistic.
Are being met.
Yeah. You can say, somebody will say, oh, there's no way they're going to get all those modalities for patients. Well, yeah, they can, because I can show you here how many we got, right? That is capable of doing.
And obviously in the beginning of class, we talked to them about, you don't want to ride with me every shift, because we're not as busy as your firehouse at all. We average 1,600-1,700 calls a year. So you might get 3 or 4 a day. Ride with Ray so you can get 8 to 10 in your shift. Right. Don't mind coming here when it's capstone and you want to be the lead paramedic, and we're seeing really cool calls at where we're at, because we have some pretty cool, crazy stuff. But for the numbers, we always tell them, go to where it's busy. Get yourself out of if you're a Geauga County resident, get out of the county. Go to Cuyahoga, go to somewhere where you're seeing other things. So when you come back to this county and when you get a job here, let's say, you're like, okay, I got this.
Even the hospitals is the same thing.
Yeah.
What
Go
you're going to see
downtown,
downtown is not going to be the same.
Sure. Well, and it's better for the student, right? Because all these students that are going to funnel into our programs are going to come from all different walks of life, all different geographical areas. So, you should go ride with the department. You should go to the inner city, ride in the city of Cleveland, and then move out to where my transport time might be 15 minutes away, and then move out a little bit more. Maybe we can get more rural, and maybe that transport time might be 30 minutes. You should go to each one of those departments, because, you can have a snapshot of what it's like to be a paramedic for 5-minute transport time, 15-minute transport time, 30-minute transport time.
Absolutely.
Like if you come to our place, we've only airlifted one patient in, I think, the 15 or 17 years that I've worked there. We don't use helicopters because we're 14 to 15 minutes away from a level 1 trauma center, right? But if you go to somewhere else in a little bit more rural community,
fly a lot of people.
So it's like, you don't know where these people are going to land, but that gives you a very diverse education. That gives you I need to plan my treatment pathway for the next 5 minutes, the next 10 minutes, 30 minutes, right? There's a lot of different things in there, and I think it's great that UH has done this, and they have so many ride sites, so that allows the student to go see different operations and different transport time frames, and that allows for different treatment, we teach it all the time, right? And I know this is probably a weird thing to say, but you want to treat a patient's pain, and you use fentanyl, and that's great. Well, how long is fentanyl good for?
Right.
How long is that effectively going to treat their patient's pain?
Transport time's about 6 minutes.
Correct. So you're not going to see
the redose.
Correct. You're not going to see that redose. But if I go to a different department, you're going to get down to leave the 12 lead on. I'm redosing the fentanyl now, or I'm out of fentanyl, and now they still have pain, and I still have 15 more minutes to go to the hospital. What do I do?
I run into this a lot with labs, like on the weekends and whatnot, where the students are like, but my transport time is only. I'm like, no, your current transport time at your current exposure. Sure. I don't know what I'm training you for, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I might be training you to be a critical care paramedic, a flight paramedic in your next job. You might go on to med school. I don't know what I'm training you for, right?
Sure.
And
you might move to another state. I
can't. Correct. Yeah. I can't guarantee that every place that you're going to go work has Caleb's 7-minute transport time.
Sure.
And just do the first of the order of things. They're like, well, we always get so deep into these scenarios and whatnot. It's like,
that's life.
Because you might get stuck in the weather. You might get
If you're in Northeast Ohio, construction,
you will get stuck
weather.
You will get stuck in.
I like telling them a story about a POTS patient I had, where it was a routine patient that we went on quite a few times, and we got there. She was actively seizing at this point because of some other reasons, but the squad slid off the driveway because of the snow. Yep. So I was there an hour and a half, and it's like our other squad was tied up on other runs. So this happens.
Mutual aid is running into the same problem. Yes.
So it happens. Like you pointed out, it's Northeast Ohio. I mean,
but I think the diversity of the ride sites, I think, is awesome in that program and capstone. And once again, we're coming back to that diversity word, with diversity with the board. Here's all the rules. Here's the oversight. Here's the handbook. This is what we're going to do. Here's the curriculum. But the diversity of that board that oversees that whole program, and then the diversity of all the ride sites really give the student a well-rounded approach and a lot better education. Over the years, as education has changed, to be more competency-based seems to be the word everybody wants to use. I know the state of Ohio is using that a lot more.
Sure.
But we're trying to also, to your point, Caleb, I think it's huge to say is, the student is our product, for lack of a better word, in any of our programs, right? So when that student goes out, our instructors care the most to put out a good product, to put out somebody that is not going to cause harm, that's going to deliver appropriate care, that's going to be high functioning, and deliver the best possible care out there to anyone's loved one in their living room. And that's what I think you all do a great job of,
and regardless
striving
of
to
whatever
deliver
program
that product,
that
for lack of a better word.
I like to say that we're all fighting for the same cause. We want to create providers in the field because we need them. And every instructor, regardless of, like I said, what program, that's what we're fighting for.
Yeah. Well, and back to Scott's point, we don't know what we're training you for. So the pathway for a paramedic is huge. It's not this narrow focus of you're going to go work at a fire department, And one of my favorite things is a student comes in, they're like, I want to be a fireman. I'm like, not in this area.
And everybody else.
You have to think about what really is that focus. Do they want to be more a critical care paramedic? Do they want to fly? Do they want to go to nursing school?
I will say,
are they just doing it to become a doctor? Because we do programs specifically for that.
I mean,
so
we
as the years have gone,
2 guys now, and
I get more and more students who are not in it to be firemen.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing this more and more, which is really kind of cool to me because we need providers at all areas. But even this year, 3 or 4 of the students aren't out to be firemen. They're out to be PAs, doctors.
PAs and docs, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And it's like, this is their stepping stone. This is awesome.
Yep.
And it's really cool, too. I've had 2 students from 3 years ago who are now in med school, and one of them's already a fellow. But they've reached out and said, hey, can you share some of your cardiac PowerPoints with us? Because this is more than we're getting in med school.
In med school, I am now.
What?
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's like, absolutely. Here, what's your email?
Well, even the amount of nurses we're getting in the program that are coming back
Which is,
through.
that's cool,
Great
too.
point, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not even just that we're training them and they're going on to something else. It's also providers that would be considered higher level providers, and then are coming back and going, all right, now we're going through this, and still learning and developing and going on to do more. Or they want to serve in their community or career change.
That's an absolutely great point. And there's kind of 2 things. One thing that Ray said,
some things
that I want to tag on there. So you talk about nursing school and then they transition to paramedic school, right? And I'm not saying one's better than the other, but they are different.
They are.
And it's I don't want to say it's funny, but it's interesting to watch. Even seasoned nurses come in, and I take EKG. So my mother, when she went to nursing school, it was just like, here's a flashcard. This is said arrhythmia, and that was it. You have to memorize what it looked like, right? And inside, I'm like, wait, they're not teaching you the rules,
right?
The interpretation rules. Like, what are you talking about, right? So here I was, literally holding EKG interpretation classes because it's taught a different way. They're taught, and again, I'm not knocking, but it's just taught differently, right? They teach a very broad swath of medicine, and then they go specialize, right?
Yeah.
We are taught a much more focused, right? Albeit it's getting wider and wider. In it was like this when I trained. It's it's like this. Nursing's that one, but it is expanding. But we are hyper focused on the stuff that's going to kill people immediately, right?
Yes.
And that has always been the case, right? So it's different from that. So there's something like even somebody that's going to be a doctor or a PA or a nurse. There's something in paramedic school that they can latch onto and use throughout the rest of their career. We do get, specifically cardiology, I think we get pretty much right across the board. We do that honestly more intensely. I've even some of the stuff. Yeah, you guys got more of that than I.
And it's been like that for. Even when I went to paramedic school, and I don't know about when you went to paramedic school.
84.
That was always the stigma of paramedic school was cardiology.
If you make it through cardiology,
you'll make it.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, but I tell every student because I still get that. The other day, I'll use his name, Adam Werner. I saw him in the ED, and he said, I'm most worried about cardiology. I said, Adam, give me 2 weeks. I'll have you reading strips. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
And I tell the students this every year, and they're like, no. It's like, in 2 weeks, they're fine. We're past it. It's like, just trust the process.
It is. It is hard, but we've also gotten good at doing it. Right?
I can teach you cardiology. I'm not going
we
to
as
Tim Falon it,
instructors,
but
not
I'm
just
gonna...
us, right?
Yes.
But we as EMS instructors, the whole group, we're good at doing that generally.
A rhythm that works for us.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
and especially like you and I together and Falon, you know, and Karen, we made something that works. And we've got the people doing the advanced class, Beth and Joe, and you know the basic classes, and we're subbing them into the product is working.
Yeah.